first one is to show you what not to do.
Put the place up, yeah, we know what we made of. Can't get
Good for perspective again.
face up, now I feel a little major. Blink of an eye, ego on my.
Howdy, howdy, we're right where we left off, getting rowdy. If you watched our last video, I finally conquered King's Crack, an obstacle on Arrowhead that has haunted me the last few trips to Sand Hollow. King's Crack is an extra credit obstacle and was not the end of the trail. So we still have 2 obstacles before we are out of Arrowhead. If you continue up the canyon, it turns into Broken Arrow Trail, a 13 on the Sand Hollow scale. This trail is far harder than anything on Arrowhead and even King's Crack. The consequences may not be as high, but it is massively more technical. Let's get through this last little bit of Arrowhead and get to the good stuff. Whenever there's something extra sketchy, we always look to Forrest, as he's always all in and easy to dirtbag into doing things first. And of course, that's exactly why he's first up on the entrance crack to Broken Arrow. What makes this crack absolutely insane is how long it is, and it snakes back and forth with the walls that are bearing an angle. There are holes, cracks, and other technicalities that you have to really be focused on and on point with, or you can easily find yourself jammed up in a crack. Now that you're committed and gone way up the crack, you hit the showstopper crack. Now this crack is a huge crack that turns sharp to the driver, and it is also like a waterfall. So you have to be really, really careful on how you place your tires, and there's a very fine line that you can fall in the crack. Now Forrest fell in the crack because he was barely off that line, but that's how hard this crack is. Forrest eats up everything. And there's a darn good reason why I said before, Forrest is the one that always goes first, because he's always into sketchy, and we all know that he's going to get himself out of it like nothing happened, and then he's going to go for it again. And just like that, he approaches it, he puts it in front dig for 2 reasons: to really get himself squared and centered on this crack, and to get those tires a little more sticky so they'll grab the rock, because there's a lot of loose sand on this rock right here, and with how little margin of error you have, you need to have the most traction. So by squaring himself up with that front dig and then getting them sticky, it's going to help him just enough to get through this thing. You'll see him come up, it hangs that tire, and he's on full sidewall on the driver's side, and that twerking back and forth on the steering wheel helps you unbind, it helps search for traction, and it kind of settles your buggy into the places that you want, and it shifts the weight of the buggy as well. We get a lot of questions on why we twerk the steering wheel back and forth, and those are all good reasons. As he sits there and he's just slowly working it, this is the best situation on something this technical. You have to take your time, you have to let the tires work slow, you have to feel your rig, because a lot of this is invisible. You can't see every point that your tires grabbing traction. So you can take what you can see, and then the rest is all feeling it out, and then just committing through and getting through that obstacle.
Yeah, the first one was to show you what not to do.
our videos.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, buddy!
I know I give a lot of tips on this channel, and if there's one tip that means the most, it's to find a good wheeling family that fits you. We had 4 or 5 rigs go through this, and we all made it. And the reason is because we all have great attitudes, we love what we're doing, we want to push each other to the limits, we want to be there in case we fail to get each other out, and we're all wanting to have a good time and seeing each other succeed. So if there is one tip that I can give you guys, is find that wheeling family. It doesn't have to be like ours, it's just got to be the one that fits you. Speaking of tips, I'm going to give you the rundown of what I've got going on when I go through this crack. So first of all, biggest thing is I paid a lot of attention to what Forrest was doing and how he handled it. Best thing you can do is watch other people, that way you get a good idea as to what's going on, if that's available. Second of all, I see how technical it is, and I see that I need to approach this with extreme caution and really got to have a grasp on what I'm doing here. So I'm tiptoeing through, making sure that I'm making every movement as correct and slowly as I can, so that way I can catch any errors that I have along the way. I go through the first initial crack, then I drop into the showstopper, and then I line myself up in that, and again, taking my time, I'm torquing that wheel back and forth to get my buggy to settle in the center of that crack. And as I come up, I kind of fade a little bit to the driver's side, and then I have to correct that. So as I come into there, you'll see me kind of pushing my rear towards that wall to level myself back out. And once I get myself in a good approachable spot, it gets real bound out. I start twerking back and forth again to try to get it to kind of wiggle its way out of a jam, and you'll see my buggy starts to pop up. As you're popping up, you got to be making adjustments the whole entire time you're moving forward, so that way you don't fall in the crack. It's so easy to just accidentally have your rears not turn when they're supposed to, and bam, you fall right in there. Luckily, I had a lot of people to watch, and I was able to take it real nice and slow, and I got up pretty easy. Now this crack may not look mega from this shot, but we're going to give you a really good perspective, because Jess is going to hop down there and get the bottom view of what I've got going on right now.
For perspective again. Many feet above my head. That is
Now we're on to the next stage of Broken Arrow. So this one is pretty freaking wild, because if you see, there's sand just pouring off the left side of this obstacle, and then on the right side it's completely sheer straight up and down. And then add on top that there's a bunch of bumps and cracks along the way. This makes this extremely technical, and to be able to work your way through here is hard enough, but on top of that, Mike's rig is a standard. So on top of everything else that he has to worry about, rear steer, front steer, making sure everything's going good, he also has to worry about a clutch and making sure he doesn't stall it or roll back. Because if you roll back in a situation like this, you're just going to fall in a crack and it's going to make it worse. Also, take note through this whole obstacle, he's literally on his sidewalls. There isn't a piece of the actual lugs and tread that are actually connecting to this obstacle. You're absolutely pinned in the center of it, and you're crawling on your sidewalls. So that means there's absolutely no margin for error, and you really got to be on top of it to be able to make this crack. So what I had going on in this obstacle was, first of all, this was the craziest entrance to this crack. So you couldn't go through it dialing down the center because there was such an undercut and it's all just pure sand underneath. So you couldn't get your fronts over the crack the standard way. So what you did is you went up the wall on the right of the crack, and once you went up it, you turned towards it and crabbed into the crack. Then you turned all the way passenger and backed up to fall in the crack, then up the other side of the crack, and then you were squared up with it, and then you could take the crack. So once your fronts are over, they've got so much traction on that rock in the front, especially with water in your tires, that when they're grabbing up there and having your frame kind of sliding across the rock, lifting your rear end up, especially sucked down a little bit, it's going to pull those rears up so you didn't have to go around like you did with the front. Now that I'm in the crack, I'm going to focus really hard on trying to stay absolutely square in the center. So side walls against flat side walls of the rock and continue through. I lost my rear axle, didn't follow that plan. And what happened is that rear driver's side tire got pegged in the bottom of the crack, and obviously I was real flexed out in a bad spot, and boom, I fell off the wall and totally screwed up. But that's all right when you got a lot of tools in your bag. You just go ahead and you pull it in front dig, and then you really just, give it the shimmy of the wheel in the front and giving it front dig to try to climb that wall and get yourself back into position, which I was able to do. And then my rears followed, and I just kept with it and pulled right on out. That obstacle was so fun and so technical. Stoked to have been able to do it. Here we are, we finally made it to the last obstacle on Broken Arrow. This trail has been absolutely hard, and this last obstacle is just a perfect finish. It is a massive straight up waterfall that has a crack to factor in it. So you have to line up perfectly on this, and it is straight vert. And you want to keep your driver's side literally on the edge of the crack, so that way it forces your passenger side to push up the wall. If you fall off on either side of that line, one way you're going to fall in and get jammed up. If you fall off on the passenger side, it's going to cause you to roll and then toss you backwards. This trail has been the most technical crack trail I have done to date, and I am super stoked to be able to have checked this off my list. Best way to support this channel is by giving the subscribe button a little skiddly-doo, diddle that notification bell, give this video the fat finger, and leave a dirty little comment below. As always, thanks for watching.